Issue 12 of Void Rivals marks the end of the second story arc for the first title published in Skybound's Energon Universe. The last couple issues of Void Rivals have felt absolutely jam-packed, and this issue takes a step back from all the action and surprises we've been seeing for a cool-down issue of sorts that emphasizes character moments. I know I've expressed some frustration about how slow the series has moved in the past, but just to be clear, that frustration was always coming from a place of love, as I was always enjoying what I was reading and was impatiently wanting to see more of the story. Given my history with the slower chapters of this story, you'd think I'd express more of the same with issue 12, but I actually think this one feels like the perfect capstone to the more busy issues we've seen, making for a satisfying bridge between this arc and the next. So while this issue does bring the Wasteland story to a close, it wastes no time in setting up a number of threads for the next arc and probably beyond. The full weight of the Energon discovery is ultimately unrealized, but teased as being in motion, so this will undoubtedly play out in future issues. Zalalac can't deal with it because he's got more pressing concerns after getting dunked on so thoroughly by Doolin. I'm definitely curious where we're going with this thread with Zalalac and how much we'll see of him in the next arc. I'm getting the vibe from this conversation where the Agorian minister says this is not the first time the Agorians have had to clean up your mess, that this is sort of a passing of the torch in terms of plot, where I'm expecting to spend more time with the Agorian half of the Sacred Ring over the course of the next 6 issues, which I for one welcome. We've gotten very little with that half of the Sacred Ring thus far, so I'm looking forward to seeing how it differs from Zertonia and getting to know Doolin a bit more. But it does leave me wondering where Zalalac and the Zertonians will fit into the unfolding plot, as we seem to be heading to Agoria with Derek and the center of the Sacred Ring with Celila. Maybe the Zertonians will continue pursuing Celila? I don't know, possible. In any case, there are quite a few threads in play now in this corner of the Energon universe. Hot Rod, the Quintessons, and Pythona are all set to appear in the title in the future, so there's no question that Void Rivals is expanding and heating up in some very exciting ways. As I mentioned, Void Rivals number 12 is heavy on character moments, and while the Zalalac Doolin opener offers a tantalizing glimpse of things to come, there are a number of sequences here that I found to be much more impactful. One of the standout moments of the issue is Proximus meeting Ultim, the youngest member of the Unifiers who ratted the group out in issue 6. This short but sweet segment softens the cold and harsh demeanor of Proximus ever so slightly, but just enough to add an endearing dimension to the cyborg's character, as well as a sympathetic facet to the interaction between two figures who have both created difficulties for our main characters. And I wouldn't say that it's explicitly giving more hints about Proximus being Celila's little brother Pilata that we saw in issue 8, but this segment might be tying the characters together, with Proximus telling Ultim to stop crying, echoing the interaction of Celila and Pilata during the flashback when the younger sibling wants to go home and Celila tells him to stop and that he can't show weakness. It's entirely possible that this is just coincidence, but if Proximus is Pilata, then this scene becomes that much more poignant and serves as a deeper point of connection between Proximus and Ultim. This issue also provides a bit of a tease for what Skuxoid is up to. I gotta be honest, I was expecting to be spending more time on this, the whole thing with Monachus and Lord Gaikoni, but it seems like the latter is not going to be playing much of a part in whatever yarn Kirkman is spinning here. The mission that old Skux took from Bosch is shown and wrapped up over a couple pages, so clearly there's something larger in the works here. Not much to say about it at this point except that I'm really looking forward to seeing where it's headed. Like I've said previously, Skuxoid always seems to find himself mixed up in major events, so I'm stoked to see what sort of game-changing shakeup this will lead to. The bulk of this issue is really Derek and Celila saying goodbye to each other, which, when you think about it, is a fairly big deal. We follow these characters for a year's worth of stories now, and they've never been apart for very long, so it's appropriate that this moment is given so much weight. We really get a sense of the bond that is formed between these two, and it feels completely natural and totally earned. I can almost see another version of this story where it might have felt like the characters made these huge, unrealistic personality shifts, all to get to where they end up in issue 12, but Kirkman really made this feel like a natural and believable evolution of characteristics and traits that have been baked into the characters from the beginning. Celila is a great example, as she is often cold and curt, but there's a genuine kindness and loyalty that we've seen peek through from time to time, and the fact that this was built into the character early on contributes to a logical progression culminating in the characters bidding each other farewell in issue 12. It's a heartfelt, meaningful moment, one that's not too sappy, and overall just really well done. But it's not all about sentiment. The farewell gesture of the two touching their foreheads together leads to an ominous series of panels revealing a mysterious figure within the sacred ring. One that seems to me to be extremely large, as in a planet-sized transformer. I say that because of the general shape, the spikes or towers or whatever, and just the level of surface detail, which admittedly we can't see a lot of due to the figure being mostly in shadow, but that really reminds me of how Unicron was similarly detailed in the '86 animated movie to confer a sense of scale. The other Transformers characters in this series are presented with much less surface detailing after all. They tend to be smoother, so the amount of detail present here leads me to the conclusion that we're dealing with a massively sized character. But is this the planet-sized Transformer, Unicron? Well, I don't know. While there are certain visual cues that suggest maybe it could be Unicron, with the green eyes being the most clear signifier to me, the shape of the head is all wrong. But there are also these horn-looking things that Unicron used to spear planets he devoured in the movie, so it's certainly suspicious, and I think we're supposed to draw comparisons to the iconic villain, but whether or not it's actually him, yeah, I don't know. I will say the overall silhouette just seems off to me. The image here suggests to me that this is a figure curled up in the void, with something akin to a mechanical cloak or wings wrapped around itself, and these spikes may not be spikes at all, but they may be feet. They seem to be connected to legs that are curled and tucked up into this being's body, but maybe that's just me. I've been wrong before, I'll certainly be wrong again, but running with that assumption that this isn't Unicron, then who is this? And that's when things get interesting. I mean, this could be some sort of proto-Unicron, not at full strength or form, or it could be an entirely new planet-sized character altogether. This Goliant individual from the prophecy, perhaps. Or I suppose it might be Zerta Trion, but I have some reservations about that one as well. I mean, it's possible that I'm wrong and this character that we're looking at isn't as gigantic as I'm thinking, but if it is, well, I'm operating under the assumption that Zerta Trion is a normal-sized Cybertronian, or normal relative to all the crazy size classes in Transformers. But it's possible that Zerta Trion could have been changed somehow. Bringing Zerta Trion into this makes the whole thing more complicated and raises a ton of questions. I've talked in the past about Zerta Trion possibly not being on the up and up in my video for issue 10, and I've been wondering if there might be something sinister and manipulative behind the visions and the prophecy since commenting on it in issue 5. Derak's vision has been proven to not be fully accurate, because that whole thing with the sacred ring being built to contain a dying sun and subsequent black hole is not the full story. Previously, Springer said that the sacred ring generates energon for a mysterious purpose. Maybe that purpose is to maintain some kind of prison for whoever is at the center of the void. Or maybe the energon generation is for creating or powering up the being at the center. It's a lot of possibilities. Despite my past skepticism about the prophecy, with all these recent revelations, I can't help but wonder if there might be grains of truth in there somewhere. The whole point behind the visions seems to have been to warn about the coming of Goliant, an entity that I assume is an existential threat to the sacred ring. And that's where all the possibilities and questions start piling up. Is Zerta Trion manipulating Derak and Celila for evil ends, or trying to push them in the right direction to save the sacred ring? Is it even Zerta speaking to Derak and Celila at all? Is it all just illusion and theater with a Machiavellian figure pulling the strings for some unknown, twisted ends? There is, after all, a lot being withheld about Zertonians and Agorians, from not knowing what the other side looks like to even more hidden knowledge about their biology and compatibility with Energon. So there are a lot of truths being kept from even those at the top of these two societies, which makes me question Zerta Trion's true nature, her aims, her allegiances, and if she's even still alive. There also seems to be two prophecies in Void Rivals. The one that Doolin and Zalalak are apparently following, where preventing unity is the way to avert the coming of Goliant, and the one that Derek and Salila appear to be following, where only unity can save them from Goliant. I say there are two prophecies, but it all may just be one prophecy that we, the readers, only have a partial picture of, or it might all come down to the way Doolin and Zalalak are interpreting the prophecy, or even the way I'm interpreting the prophecy as a reader. Perhaps Doolin and Zalalak are taking a hard stance on what they believe will both prevent the coming of Goliant, as well as maintaining their positions of power and control. Or maybe there are two seemingly contradictory aspects to unification as it relates to the prophecy and Goliant. Maybe unification does set into motion the coming of Goliant, as Doolin and Zalalak believe, but maybe it's also the only chance the Agorians and Zertonians have of surviving Goliant. Maybe we're talking about two different kinds of unification here. There's the figurative meaning, standing together with a common goal and kinship, but then there's also the literal, physical connection. Because it really seems like this mysterious figure opens its eyes when Derek and Salila's energon ports touch. Which sounds very not safe for work when I say it out loud. And it could always be that the prophecy is completely bogus, and there is no Goliant at all. And what's up with the old Cybertronian legend Hot Rod mentioned in the 2024 special? How does that fit in? I don't know, man, but it's making my head hurt. And as an aside, was I the only one who was reminded of the Marvel story Primal Scream during this sequence? Obviously, the particulars are different and the vibe is much more subdued, but the underlying current of taboos being broken and as a result summoning the attention of an existential threat seems similar in a way, in a good way, I might add, a way that plays on my nostalgia for the Marvel Comics years. I feel like some of these details are evocative of some of the detailing we saw on Primus in Primal Scream, so that might also be contributing to why I feel there's a connection. In any case, there are more questions than ever in Void Rivals at this point, and they're the sort of questions that are keeping my head spinning with theories, and keeping my excitement up for reading future issues. But I've prattled on for more than enough time, so I'm going to turn it over to you. Anybody else excited about the team-up of Handroid and Salila? I think we're in for a real treat there, given their amusing interactions in the past. Let me know your thoughts on the video, this issue of Void Rivals, the reveals, and your theories in the comments below. Thank you for watching this. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.